There is one mystery from Kingdom Hearts Union Cross that I don't think we have paid nearly enough attention to. At some point after the Keyblade War, the data version of Daybreak Town was forcibly connected to Game Central Station, the world of Wreck-It Ralph. And to this day, who created that connection remains a mystery. And I think it's quite an important one, because that one connection causes the glitches that expose Daybreak Town, introduces the network that eventually is used to trap the four willful darknesses, and may even be connected to how Strelitzia survived. So someone reached into the program from outside, connected an entirely new world, and changed almost everything that happened afterwards. The question is, who did it? Because I think solving that mystery may explain why Game Central Station was placed in Union Cross at all, and why I believe it may be about to return in Kingdom Hearts 4. Before we start asking who made the connection, we need to understand precisely why Game Central Station was different from every other Disney world in Union Cross. Before the Keyblade War, the Book of Prophecies allowed wielders to access projections of worlds that existed in the future. After the war, those worlds were connected into data and remained connected to the data version of Daybreak Town. That is how the Dandelions continued visiting places like Agrabah, Wonderland, and the Olympus Coliseum, despite the original world having already been shattered. Game Central Station was not part of that arrangement. Brain explains that these worlds could remain connected precisely because they were all part of the data system. But then a completely new world was attached to it by force. It had not been connected to the original Daybreak Town, meaning it was not simply another future world copied through the book. And its appearance immediately coincided with something going wrong. Enemies from the new world began invading Daybreak Town. Glitches started to appear throughout their world. Ventus and Scold saw images of the Foretellers. Elrena encountered corrupted images of Strelitzia, and it was through investigating these abnormalities that Brain finally realized they had never returned to the real world at all. That means Game Central Station did two things simultaneously. It connected another world to the program, and it revealed that the program existed at all. Without that foreign connection, the Union leaders may never have discovered that Data Daybreak Town was a cage until it was far too late. So this raises an obvious question. Who did it? Who had the ability to reach Data Daybreak Town from the outside? Who would benefit from exposing the program? And why choose Game Central Station specifically? Because once we follow the entire chain of events, it becomes clear that this wasn't simply an accidental collision between two data worlds. Game Central Station changes almost everything that happens afterwards. The first possibility is that the connection originated from someone within Game Central Station itself, and there is one character there who knows how to manipulate the program. Turbo infiltrated Sugar Rush from another game, altered its code, suppressed Vanellope's true identity, and rewrote the memories of its population. Candy somehow discovers the Heartless and physically connects their power to the game system. He then uses that foreign element to command the Heartless and further influence what happens within Sugar Rush. So this is someone who understands how to move between games, interfere with code, and integrate an external form of darkness into a program. On the surface, he seems like a pretty reasonable candidate, but there is a problem. King Candy does not appear to understand the wider connection between Game Central Station and Daybreak Town. He identifies Player as an outsider who infiltrated his game. He responds to the foreign Heartless after they have already begun appearing, and his interference remains local to Sugar Rush. Nothing suggests that he possesses the ability to reach across different eras and forcibly attach his arcade to another reality. So it seems as though King Candy exploited the breach, but he did not create it. Then there is Darkness. Now this is a much stronger possibility because the Darknesses explicitly describe their purpose as infection, and Game Central Station is a network capable of reaching countless worlds. But the finale establishes that they cannot use Game Central Station independently. Without physical forms, they require someone with a Keyblade to open its gates. They discover an existing network and try to hijack it, only for a player and Ephema to trap them inside. So Darkness definitely wants to infect the connection, but it doesn't appear to have built it either. Now, Maleficent is another possibility because she travelled backwards from the future and triggered the data world shutdown when she used the lifeboat. But that's a pretty easy one to dismiss because she also displays no knowledge of Game Central Station and spends most of her time being guided through systems that she doesn't understand. And quite frankly, I don't see there being any real particular benefit to her having anything to do with Game Central Station. Luxu is a much stronger possibility. Unlike the Dandelions, he remains in the real Daybreak Town. He knows that the data world exists, he knows that it was created as a cage for darkness, and he possesses the book's missing context through the Master's private instructions. And of course, he survives throughout history by transferring his heart between vessels. Luxu is also openly identified as the traitor. The Master tells him that his thoughts, feelings and actions will become the key to the future and that he is counting on Luxu to eventually act according to those feelings. So although Luxu is told not to interfere, the Master appears to expect that he will. And by the end of Union Cross, Luxu absolutely does interfere. He confronts the darkness that escaped with Maleficent. He places the true Dandelion inside a lifeboat. He then meets Brain during the destruction of Daybreak Town. And whatever happens in the missing portion of their interaction contributes to Brain eventually appearing in Scarlet at Kylo. So could Luxu have connected Game Central Station? It is possible. He has access to the real control room, he has knowledge unavailable to the Union leaders, and he is willing to reinterpret the Master's instructions. And if Strelitzia was somehow recovered from the data world, Luxu may have been the one involved in extracting her. But there is still nothing directly connecting Luxu to Ralph's world specifically. When he operates the terminal, the connection already exists. His known role is to observe the data world, confront the escaped darkness, and send the true Dandelion away. He may take advantage of the connection, he may even understand what makes it possible, but as things currently stand, I don't think he fully explains where Game Central Station comes from. There is, however, one person who appears to explain almost everything. The person who designed the entire system. The Master is the obvious answer for good reason. He created the Book of Prophecies, he selected the Union leaders, he ordered Ava to preserve the Dandelions, he knew Maleficent would arrive from the future, he knew the lifeboat would be used, and the entire structure of Data Daybreak Town only exists because of his plan to trap the darknesses. Luxu confirms this explicitly when he talks to Brain. He says that a normal world that falls to darkness can enter a state of sleep, but Data Daybreak Town is different. If that world completely falls to darkness, then everything remaining inside of it falls with it. And Game Central Station ends up serving this plan extremely well. So it is very easy to imagine the Master deliberately installing that network as part of his containment plan. And there is another important piece of evidence supporting him. The Master already knows a world beyond the reality occupied by everyone else. When speaking to Darkness, he describes a place beyond their normal world of light and darkness, a world of fiction. And as I said already earlier, Game Central Station is a world that does not belong to the Book of Prophecies. It comes from somewhere outside of Daybreak's expected world and time. That makes it very tempting to view it as the Master's early experiment in trying to connect his reality to unreality. Maybe he needed to test whether a world treated as fiction could breach a data world, and the timing is almost perfect. From every single angle, it's very plausible to think that the connection to Game Central Station is advancing all of the Master's goals. He built the cage, he knew of the world of fiction, he knew the darknesses needed to be contained, and he connected the precise world that would eventually become their prison. Which means that the obvious conclusion to this mystery is that the one who created the connection to Game Central Station was obviously the Master of Every system has glitches, errors. We all know there was someone with a plan to create this very thing, to create a virus. In other words, I don't believe Ava, Luxu and Brain's desire to stop the Master ends with the Key saga. I think in Kingdom Hearts 4 we may very well see the grand outcome of all their actions over the eras. all of this entire effort to create a virus to circumvent fate, to prevent the light from expiring, I believe this was all in fact what the Master actually wanted. Maybe Game Central Station wasn't another part of the Master's program. Maybe it was the virus to that program. And what if the person who connected it was the same person who promised to become that virus? Brain knew that changing the memories of the Dandelions had not changed the direction in which their world was heading. The Keyblade War had been erased from their minds, the survivors had been placed inside a new world. But despite everything that had been overwritten, the future was still moving towards destruction. So Brain decided to interfere with the program itself. I'm going to become a virus and overwrite the program that is this world's future. At the time, this sounds like a metaphor. Brain intends to become an anomaly within the Master's design, someone who can act against a future that has already been written. But Game Central Station takes Brain's metaphor and makes it almost literal. It is a foreign program inserted into Data Daybreak Town from the outside. It introduces information that the system was never meant to contain. It exposes the true nature of the data world. It changes the distribution of the darknesses, and most importantly, it alters the final fate of the Union leaders. Everything about Game Central Station resembles the exact kind of virus that Brain said he intended to become. Now obviously, the Brain standing inside the Data Daybreak Town could not have created the connection. He is genuinely investigating it. He doesn't know who is responsible, and he has no idea why this foreign world has appeared. But Brain's story does not end in the Data Daybreak Town, does it? He survives into the future, which means that the person Brain is investigating may not be another character at all. He may be unknowingly investigating himself. Now, this is the type of theory that can get very confusing very quickly, and trust me, I have spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly how to make this work. So let's go back to why Brain even possesses the Book of Prophecies in the first place. The Master of Masters actually was the one who selected Brain as one of the new Union leaders, but Brain was not supposed to receive the book. The person that the Master intended to receive the Book of Prophecies was of course Ephema. Now what we know is that Master Ava disobeyed the Master's instructions and gave it to Brain instead, but before doing so, Ava and Brain discussed the exact problem at the center of this theory. If the future has already been recorded, and if someone uses that knowledge to change what is supposed to happen, would the Book of Prophecies then also change to include their interference? In other words, would the future rewrite itself? Or would their attempt to resist fate reveal that the resistance had already been part of fate all along? The truth of the matter is, neither of them knew, and neither do I. But the reason Ava placed the book in Brain's hands instead of Ephema's is because she wanted to find out. This was her act of resistance against the future the Master had prepared, and Brain understood what she was asking of him, and so he would become the virus. He would use this forbidden knowledge of the future to create an outcome that had not been intended. Brain doesn't actually complete this promise within the ancient era. The truth of the matter is, he actually runs out of time, until Lushu gives him more. Near the end of Union Cross, Brain says that he has no intentions of using the remaining lifeboat for himself. He wants to wake as many of the Dandelions trapped inside the data world as possible. Now that line is crucial because it tells us exactly what Brain is trying to accomplish. He isn't merely looking for his own escape. But as I said before, Lushu explains that his solution cannot work because if Data Daybreak Town falls to darkness, well, that's the end of it. But even so, Brain still refuses to give up, and he specifically says that he will find an answer no matter how long it takes. Now whatever happens between Brain and Lushu in that moment is hidden from us, but the outcome isn't. When Brain appears in Scarlet at Kylum, Sigurd is there waiting for him, and he tells Brain that his arrival in that particular era had already been decided. So Brain somehow reached a future civilization that knew he was coming, a civilization founded by his old friend Ephema, a civilization that potentially preserves the technology and the knowledge of the Age of Fairy Tales, and perhaps most importantly, Brain reaches a future that can give him the time and resources his younger self never possessed. So consider the position future Brain would now occupy. He remembers an unexplained connection appearing within Data Daybreak Town. He knows that connection exposed the cage, and it contributed to the survival of his friends. He knows that the network trapped 4 darknesses, and he knows that the past already contains the result of someone reaching into it from the outside. And now, from some time in the future, he may finally possess the ability to become that person. So my theory is that Future Brain, or an organization later shaped by his influence, connected Game Central Station backwards into Data Daybreak Town. And that is the reason why Young Brain cannot identify the culprit. The person responsible exists in Brain's future, and Future Brain would not need to guess what consequences connecting Game Central Station to Data Daybreak Town would create. He already remembers them. So Future Brain doesn't need to invent a completely new plan. He only needs to recreate the event that already happened from his past perspective. Brain survives into the future because Game Central Station appeared in his past, and Game Central Station appears in his past because Brain survives into the future. The future creates the past that creates the future, and so we have a closed loop. And that would explain why the connection has no visible point of origin. There was never an earlier version of the timeline in which someone connected a different world. Game Central Station has always appeared in Data Daybreak Town because Future Brain has always connected it. But for this theory of mine to actually work, Game Central Station must genuinely alter the Master of Masters program rather than simply help to fulfill it. And when we look at the complete sequence, that is exactly what happens. Think about this. Before the connection, the new Union leaders do not realize that they are still inside Data. The glitches expose the cage, and because of the appearance of the Darklings, that helps lead the characters towards Ventus and the darkness associated with him. And most importantly, Game Central Station changes what happens to 4 of the 5 darknesses that were originally intended for the Union leaders. The Master tells Luciu that 5 darknesses would feed upon the 5 new leaders, but that is not the configuration we ultimately receive. 1 remains associated with Ventus and goes into the future, whilst the other 4 become interested in using Game Central Station as an infected network, and so as a result they follow player away from the Union leaders and into the cable. Think about that. If Game Central Station had not been connected, then the darknesses would not have seen it as an opportunity to spread themselves across the network, and so instead they might have just ended up possessing the Union leaders as the Master foretold. So Game Central Station replaces the 4 human vessels the Master intended with a sealed corridor between worlds. That's an actual overwrite of the outcome the Master described. Game Central Station doesn't simply assist the original program, it completely changes how the program reaches its destination. And it also creates the kind of external access that Brain would require to complete his unfinished rescue. Brain cannot wake the Dandelions through the normal rules of sleeping worlds. He cannot evacuate them all through the lifeboats, and once Data Daybreak Town falls to darkness, he would have no ordinary way back inside. But what he needed was a back door, a connection from somewhere beyond the cage, and Game Central Station may provide precisely that. A network capable of linking otherwise separate game worlds, a route into a world that should have become permanently inaccessible. But it still leaves us with the Master of Masters, because although I do believe that Future Brain was the one that made the connection, I don't think Brain necessarily acted outside everything the Master had foreseen. This could explain why the Master selected Brain specifically as a Union leader, even though Brain was never supposed to receive the book. What if Brain was selected because the future already showed what he would become after Arthur gave him the book? The Master does not have to command every individual action, and in fact, if you pay very close attention to how he maneuvers, he never really does. What he tends to do is chooses specific people and creates circumstances and gives them roles, and then he relies upon their own genuine thoughts, feelings, and actions. Brain may genuinely be rewriting fate, but the Master may understand that that very same rewrite is itself part of fate. And this brings us back to why at the start of the video I said Game Central Station may become important again in Kingdom Hearts 4. You see, Nomura originally teased that this world would appear in Union Cross when he said that a character from it would appear in Kingdom Hearts 3 as a summon. Now, we didn't know who exactly this would be at the time, but it quickly became clear that that character was Ralph. But Sora did not receive Ralph at a random moment. He gets Ralph as a summon directly after completing the Viren Rex Beat of Lead minigame inside of Toybox. Now, at the time, that could easily be dismissed as a simple connection between two video games. But of course, what we went on to learn was that Viren Rex represented a real person and reality beyond Sora's own. Yozora is real, Quadratum is real, and so what looked like fiction inside of Toybox was a window into an actual reality. Meanwhile, Game Central Station appears in Union Cross as a game world outside of the normal Book of Prophecy system. Now, that does not necessarily prove that Game Central Station itself exists within Quadratum, but Ralph's placement besides Viren Rex becomes very suspicious with every new revelation. And so it's very possible that Kingdom Hearts 4 may finally reveal the future side of the cable and confirm who exactly connected it. Game Central Station was never just another world in Union Cross. It was the world that overwrote the future. And if this is how one world crossed into another before, then it may also be our first clue to how it may happen again in Kingdom Hearts 4. That, however, is a theory for another time. But until then, my name is Next Gen Novelist, and that's all I've got to say, and I'm out. Peace.